I'm going to let Micah get slides going. This week is your third week. You made it through 2. I mean, that's worth celebrating. But CAB this week is dodgeball tournament, and that's on Friday, September 8th at 9 p.m. in the CAC. I do believe there's a double elimination. I don't really know what that means. You know what that means.
Bible study is on Monday nights from 9:30 to 10 in the basement of the Keim Center, led by MAs Joy and Phoebe. Snacks and drinks will be provided. Earn 5 CE points if you're there. The first meeting is tonight, and it's open to everyone. Bring your favorite Bible verse or study topic ideas as we decide what we'll be diving into this semester.
Christo Athos, or known as CA, will meet on Sunday, September 10th at 7 p.m. in the Yoast Team Room. All are welcome, earn 5 CE points. So maybe you're a person who likes sports and don't play a sport, you're still welcome to come.
Students interested in traveling to Europe this summer with the International Chorale should meet in Keim 105 today at 11:40 a.m.
That's right after formation. Students, lunch and learns with Counselor Jose Gloria. This is something new. First one will be on September 6th, 12:30 to 1:30 in the Souter Rooms off of the dining hall. Bring your lunch and learn about the Enneagram. Earn 5 CE points. Look for an email from Jose after formation to fill out a form and take an assessment. The assessment is required to participate. This is for all students, faculty, and staff.
Are you feeling overwhelmed or stressed? Check out the Rest from Stress in the corner of the Lark's Nest. What you will find there are stress relief, coloring sheets, communal puzzles, journal prompts, and quote board to write positive quotes or messages to fellow Larks.
Cultures Fair is an evening to learn from others and taste amazing food from around the world. This will take place Thursday, September 21 from 6 to 9 at Hesston Mennonite Church. Check your email or contact Miss Gretchen Gear to sign up. This one doesn't have a slide. So as you leave formation today, please pick up after yourself. Throw away your water bottles, pick up your trash, put your pencils in the buckets in the back, whatever else you need to do. And now for announcements from athletics.
So for athletics, we have a couple of shout outs for the week. The golf team finished second at the Hesston Open, and that's wonderful. Yes, good. They beat multiple conference schools and a region school, so that was a much improvement. Very good job, men there. Soccer teams both beat Spurgeon last Tuesday. The women won 8-0, the men won 5-1, and Kira had 4 goals and 3 assists. And for the men, Jordan had 1 goal and 3 assists. So that was great. And then a couple of things happening this week. Tuesday and Wednesday, golf is at Hutchinson at the Crazy Horse Golf Course. Soccer is playing early on Wednesday, 4 and 6:30 against Southeast Community College. We have volleyball at home against Neosho on Wednesday at 6:30. And softball is playing their first fall game on Wednesday at 7. And on Saturday, soccer is home against Pratt, 1 and 3. And volleyball is at Kansas Wesleyan. So great job, everyone.
Happy Monday of week 3. It is very good to see you. Good to see so many of you. You make our lives shine here at Hesston College. Our theme verses are best understood in the context of the life of Jesus. And so I'd like to kind of put the story into context a little bit. We're going to back it up several places. First, the first real big event of the adult life of Jesus is that he got baptized. And at his baptism, God said, "You are my son, my beloved son. With you I am well pleased." That understanding, that identity of belovedness, that knowing that you are so, so, so loved by God, that must come first before you have the ability to do the hard things you need to do. That's true for Jesus, that's true for us. Next, Jesus was led into the wilderness where he was tempted by Satan on how to do this special calling. Are you really beloved? Are you sure you're really beloved? You think God loves you that much? And y'all need to watch out, because I think the devil would say the same thing to you and me. And in the wilderness, he was tempted to do his calling in the wrong way, the easy way, taking the shortcut way. Do all these fancy-pantsy things, Jesus, and then people, of course, are going to love you. They're going to have to love you. Jump off the temple and have angels catch you, and of course, they're going to almost kind of have to love you. It's a subtle form of coercion. Or, shoot, I'll give you all the political power in the world, and you can use an army and force people to love you. All of which Jesus said, no. And then we come to the story where our verses are today. Jesus goes to his hometown, Nazareth, and he goes to worship there with his people like he has done many, 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 many times before. And because he's just kind of coming back into town, they let him be the Torah reader of the day, and they hand him this script of Isaiah. It also means he was the dancer of the day, but that's a whole nother formation. Believe it or not, whoever read the sacred writings that for the day also was the lead dancer. So Jesus was, they wouldn't have let him read if he hadn't been a good dancer. So kind of keep that in mind. We may need to work on this. Okay. And he read these words. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And then Jesus said, surprise! The person that Isaiah was talking about is me. I'm it. I am the Messiah. And the people of Nazareth were thrilled. They were thrilled. They were also a little bit cautious because, well, he was pretty ordinary and actually kind of smelly when he was in middle school, but, right, Jesus. But no, in the main, they were just like, yes, all of these good things, release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, setting the prisoners free. That's all going to happen to us. Yes. All spoke well of him, says verse 22. But Jesus knew their hearts. He knew that they wanted all of these really good things only for themselves. To prove it, Jesus told them two stories that were true stories, and the people of Nazareth knew these stories, and they knew that they were true stories, but quite frankly, they had conveniently forgotten about them. Jesus said, about 700 years ago, remember when God sent the prophet Elijah to a widow who was starving to death? Now, this widow lived in the town of Zarephath, which happens to be in the country of Phoenicia. And of course, Phoenicia happens to be in enemy territory where they worship another god. And God gave this starving widow and her son a never-ending supply of oil and flour. Gut punch. And this is true. You can read about this in 1 Kings chapter 17. And then, said Jesus, because he did not know when to stop, he said, you also remember when God healed a leper named Naaman. God sent the prophet Elisha to go see this military captain who probably had led an army to invade our country. Absolutely, Syria was the enemy. But this man had leprosy, and God healed this man who worshiped a god named Naaman. Gut punch. What? Like, are there not enough Starving widows in Israel that God couldn't have taken care of them? Aren't there some lepers in Israel? What is the deal, God? There was stone silence, not a pin drop. The people of Nazareth knew those stories were true, knew that God had done that. God had been kind and loving and healing to people who were different than they were, people who worshiped in other ways, but they conveniently forgot. So here's this Jesus, and Jesus has this special calling, and Jesus says he's the one, and Jesus wants to help and heal all people, not just people who are like us. Jesus wants to heal people who maybe have different faith traditions. What? And they're like, and I have no idea where I am, so I'm going to go look. And of course, before we get judgmental, this is the part I forgot. We must remember that we do this sometimes too. Christians, other people, we can also think it's only for us. So don't get too judgmental. Jesus came and had this special calling to bring healing to all sorts of other people who worship in other ways, have different faith traditions. It's like he's showing a new understanding of God. Or maybe this was the original and right understanding of God, and they knew it, the people knew it, but they had conveniently forgotten. And now they remembered. And even though they got it and they knew it was true, they were so mad that they took Jesus by the shoulders. They took him to the edge of the cliff of the town where there was a big cliff, and they tried to throw him off, and they tried to kill him. But it wasn't his time yet, and so he walked through the crowd and away. So we have to ask the question, do we conveniently forget to?
My name's John Murray. I'm the Director of International Admissions here at Hesston College. Been that role for about a little over 6 years now. And before I was in that role, I was a pastor in Mennonite churches for 30 years. Yes, I'm that old. Including 17 years here in this congregation. It's been a long time, though, since I've stood in this place to talk to people. I grew up in a small rural town in northern Indiana that was not diverse at all. I mean, everybody in that community was pretty much white Christians like I was. I grew up thinking that interfaith engagement was conversations between Methodists, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Catholics, and Mennonites. If there ever was a conversation about other religions, it was often with veiled animosity, and sometimes not very veiled. And then through a story that's way too long to tell in this context, I ended up in India. And there, Hindus and Muslims became my friends, my co-workers. And when they started calling me their brother, I embraced the truth that they were my family. I actually may be one of the only Mennonite pastors who ever preached a sermon in a Christian church in India that was translated to the local language by a Hindu priest. And we had an amazing conversation afterwards about what we talked about. My experience pushed me to think more deeply and to study more broadly about interfaith engagement. It has also changed the way I've looked at many scriptures, including the story of Jesus and the woman at the well, including the parable that Jesus told that we often call the Good Samaritan, probably a little microaggression in that title. It's changed the way I looked at Peter and Cornelius' encounter in Acts chapter 10, and the context of this year's theme verse, which Michele just spoke about. But the verse that I want to focus on this morning is from Ephesians chapter 4. For Jesus is our peace. In his flesh, he has made both groups into one and has broken down the dividing wall. That is the hostility that's between us. Who are these two groups? These two groups are Jews and Greeks. People from different countries, different cultures, with different religious backgrounds. That's the people that Paul is writing to, saying Jesus has broken down the dividing wall and the hostility between us and has made us one. So how do we go about breaking down this dividing wall of hostility between us? Because the reality is that cultural and religious differences do create a dividing wall between us, and not just between Jews and Greeks many years ago, but between those of us who live here and now today. I would like to suggest that there's three things that we start with anyway to break down the dividing wall of hostility. The first is that we need to develop an understanding of other faiths. We need to learn their history, their practices, their doctrines, their understandings of the way the world works and how they encounter. We also need to resist universalizing our limited understandings and assuming that just because we have a little understanding, we now know how people of other religions function and work in the world and relate to each other. One of the biggest hindrances to interfaith engagement is believing that people of another religion all agree with each other. We as Christians know very well that there's a lot of other Christians who disagree with us, who practice their Christianity differently and do things differently, but somehow we often assume that everybody from other faiths all agrees with each other. That's not the case. And thirdly, we need to do some intentional reflection on the nature of our encounter with people of other religions. And it's this third one that I want to focus on this morning. My reflections come from two writers, 3 books. The first is Paul Knitter's Introduction to the Theology of Religions. Knitter is a Christian who writes about 4 different theological approaches to the understanding of encounters with other faiths. This is written from a Christian perspective about differences within Christianity. The other is Diana Eck, and 2 books that she wrote. One is A New Religious America, and the other one is Encountering God. New Religious America is a study that she did about all the different religions in the U.S., and Encountering God is much more of a personal journey experience of her own. She actually writes from not just a Christian perspective, but from the reality of different religions all have different approaches to different religions. Interestingly, as you compare these 2 writers and authors, they both have very common understandings of different models. I want to talk this morning about 4 different models of religious encounter with people of other religions. And I want to use the metaphor of a spiritual mountain to kind of help us understand the difference between these different models of engagement. The mountain is our spiritual journey, and the top of the mountain is the fulfillment of our religious experience. You might call it heaven or nirvana or whatever you see as the ultimate goal of religion. Those, Knitter calls them replacement, Eck calls it exclusion. The second one is fulfillment, which Eck kind of divides. In one book, she refers to it as inclusion, the other as assimilation. The third is mutuality, and the fourth is acceptance. Eck uses both of these as pluralism, but divides them out within her conversations. The first model is the replacement model. In this replacement model, there is basically, I'm right, you're wrong. My religion is true, your religion is false, and there is just one road to the top of the mountain, and it's my road. And if you're not on that road, you're not going to get to the top of the mountain. Interfaith engagement is all about convincing somebody else that I'm right and you're wrong. The second is the fulfillment model. In the fulfillment model, there is other religions have elements of truth within them that are reflections of kind of the foundations or the beginnings of the truth of my religion. There is a greater truth that I possess that is just kind of in infant stages in other religions. In this, there are many roads in the foothills, but once you get above the tree line, there's just one way to the rest of the way to the top of the mountain. Interfaith engagement is about helping others to see how their faith fits into a broader and truer framework of my faith. The third is the mutuality model. In the mutuality model, there are similarities in all religions. Take the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto me. That truth shows up in every religion. Find it in the writings of some other religion, it'll be there. And we can support one another in our common search for truth. There are basically many roads that lead to the top of the mountain. And interfaith engagement is about discovering those points of connection that help us to work together for the common good. And as we have these points of connection, these commonalities, we can work together to create a better world in which we live. And then there's the acceptance model. To truly love is to truly fully respect the otherness of the other. And this one you can't see very well, but it says there may be absolute truths, but none of them know all those truths absolutely. And the bottom line is that there are many mountains that you can choose to climb. There's just many different mountains out there, and we just accept the fact that we're all different, and we're all going to do things differently, and we're all kind of going to point toward a different ultimate direction. And interfaith engagement is about promoting tolerance and acceptance of everybody who's different. Those are the four models: replacement, fulfillment, mutuality, and acceptance. And you can kind of look at this in this progression that both Eck and Knitter talk about, and you can begin to assume that, well, the replacement is the dividing wall of hostility. And you slowly work your way down to lowering the dividing wall of hostility, lowering the anger and frustration, until you get to acceptance, where the dividing wall of hostility is gone, and we all just live in peace and love with one another. And I think that's a tragic mistake. It just doesn't fit with my understanding of the world in which we live and my experiences in different parts of the world. In fact, Paul Knitter, in his book, Introduction to Theologies of Religion, the last chapter is titled An Inconclusive Conclusion, which he goes through then and looks at each one of these models and says, you know, there's something really good and true and important about this one, and there's some real problems with this one. And he does that with every one of these four models. And as I pondered Knitter and what he was talking about in this inconclusive conclusion, I came to the belief that the problem is really that we look at these in this order all the time. We tend to look at these from replacement, fulfillment, mutuality, acceptance. And what if we turned the order upside down? What if, as we merged these models and tried to find the good sides of each and get rid of the bad sides of each, we flipped this upside down and we started with acceptance? We start with the fact that we are all different from one another. We have grown up in different cultures, we speak different languages, we have different understandings of history, different backgrounds. In fact, this is true even if you're Christian, even if you're Mennonite. I've often said, I'm a Mennonite if you let me define it, because there are some Mennonites out there that I disagree with. And I'm a Christian if you let me define it, because there's some Christians out there that I disagree with. But I need to learn to walk in acceptance and toleration and embrace of those who are different. And I need to try and understand who they are and develop enough curiosity to listen carefully to their experience. But I also need to understand I will never fully understand who they are. I can walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, but it's still my feet in their shoes. And it's still my experience that's shaping how I experience the shoes they walk in. But we need to begin with that acceptance, that understanding that we are all different. And once we begin there and we begin to relate to one another and build relationships, we can begin to discover some mutuality. That we are all created in the image of God. That we are all beloved by the God who created us in God's own image. And we can begin to work together in the common good. We can begin to work together against things like poverty. And we can work together to bring peace in the world and a sustainable world in which we live. And once we work together and develop that kind of friendship, we can begin to discover some fulfillment in one another's ways. We can begin to fulfill one another in our own journey. That's happened to me. When I encountered a Muslim and began to develop a good friendship with him, one of the things we began to talk about was the Muslim practice of praying 5 times a day and what that meant to them and how those were specific times. And I began to realize my experience of prayer is lacking. To make prayer that kind of priority that I do it 5 times a day, no matter what else is happening at that time of day, wow. And as a pastor, I always we share pastor stories, and the success of a pastor is usually how many people showed up on Sunday morning, right? Well, I end up going to a Hindu priest who invited me to his early morning ritual. And I went there, and only one other person showed up. And they came late, and they left early. And I'm like, this is success? And I asked him about, why does only one person show up here? And he said, it's not about how many people come, it's about whether I'm faithful in doing what I'm called to do. And suddenly, the definition of spiritual leadership changed for me. And I also trust and pray that my living out my Christianity in their presence has helped them develop a fuller and deeper understanding of who God is in the world. And then maybe, just maybe, if we work through acceptance, mutuality, fulfillment, we can actually get to the place where we talk about the things that need to be replaced in religion. Because religion doesn't always take us to the top of the mountain. There are many stories in history where religion has supported some of the most vile, violent, destructive things in the world. Next week, September 11th, it will be 22 years since a group of people who were embracing their faith flew airplanes into buildings in New York City and in Washington, D.C. That's the worst of religion, folks. And when I first met with my Muslim friend after that happened, the first thing he said was, Osama bin Laden is the devil. He wanted me to know that that was the wrong understanding of religion, that that was not taking religion to the top of the mountain. It was destroying the reality of life. And we need to talk about the things that need to be replaced. And frankly, if you look at Christian history, we're not too much better than the folks who flew planes into the buildings in New York City and Washington, D.C. There's plenty of Christian-supported violence that has taken place in the world. And there is plenty of churches who have overlooked and neglected things like sexual abuse and violence in the home. And that is not a religion that's taking us to the top of the mountain, and it needs to be replaced, and we need to find a way to talk about it. The challenge is we can't start there. You got to start to where you can build some relationship and understanding and trust so you get to the point where you can talk about the things that need to be replaced. In my experience, in my study, I've been transformed by my interfaith engagement. And I pray that we as a Hesston College community can experience transformation in our engagement with one another, from our different cultural backgrounds, from our different religious backgrounds, and that through acceptance, mutuality, fulfillment, and replacement, we can indeed be transformed, all of us. But we do it in that order.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Super important. You know what? We're not going to. Because of time, we're going to do our response. You guys are so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. I want you to think all this week, and there's going to be a chance at the beginning of formation on Friday for you to write about what you heard. But I think this is good to do. I want you to think about this all week. Come to see me, come to see Nick or John if you want to talk about it, all right? When we come on Friday, we're going to ask you who the widows of Zarephath are in your life. We're going to ask you who you need to accept more and listen to with more respect. And we're going to hear from a panel of students, faculty, and staff about their experiences. It'll be a beautiful thing. Thank you for your attention, and if you've not done attendance, do it now. Thanks.